Hi again. Okay, so the goal for this module is to understand how your perspective of intimacy has been impacted and then to set a vision for the closeness you desire in a relationship. So you will end with 3 steps to learning exactly how impact can be reimagined. But in order to do that, we're going to dive into the power of fear. So fears and triggers, they're linked. And because of your experience with sexual trauma, both of these areas are heightened, especially around exposed vulnerability. Now, when I talk about intimacy, I mean the human desire that we all have to be known, seen, and loved for all that we are by another person. As I entered into a new relationship, it was becoming clear that there were areas where the closeness I desired was hampered. And this was apparent in how conflict was handled, in my willingness to share hard things or not, and in how we made up. So noticing fear was really the first indicator I had to recognize that I may have a hindrance to emotional and physical intimacy. Fear can lurk subtly, and often we like to give it other, more comfortable labels. So begin to notice how it shows up for you. What form does it take? Because the more I paid attention to how fear displayed in me and what it felt like in my body, the more I realized just how much it was running the show. So in particular, I want to give very clear examples. So my fears were showing up in how I embodied my sexuality and in how I felt after we were intimate. So for example, in a new relationship, if we did not make out or have physical touch throughout the day, then I would wonder if he was mad at me. And there was also a difficulty in discerning when I actually wanted to engage in any type of sexual act versus when I was performing out of obligation of perceived expectation. So keyword there is a perceived expectation. So to highlight an important factor, there was zero pressure or coercion, right? That is key in healing. If that exists, it's going to be really tricky to not be consistently triggered in really tough ways because it's going to feel like it did when the sexual trauma first occurred. So if I were to say that I didn't want to do something, still, if I don't want to do something, then the reaction is loving and never guilting. But because that wasn't like any of my past experiences, I wasn't really sure how to unlearn how I had always navigated my relationships with men. It was so different. So I was showing up from a trauma response, and he was showing up with a healthy perception of consent, care, and respect. The person that I am with had no idea that I was making up these stories in my head about our attachment. Emotional vulnerability can feel so unsafe and scary. So sexual vulnerability was a way for me to gain closeness. But that pattern, it can't be sustained forever if I wanted true connection with my partner. And the same goes for you. So I'll talk more about that later and how you can overcome fears and find true intimacy through reshaping patterns in your life. So it's your turn. How can you begin to identify your personal fears related to intimacy? All right, now to the how. In the beginning, I said we were going to learn how your perspective of exposed vulnerability had been impacted and influenced and set a vision for the closeness you desire in a relationship. You're going to reach that goal with these 3 different steps. Remember, this is an interactive course. You get out of it what you put into it, and your healing is dependent upon you continuing to move and take steps toward it. So, first step, take a few minutes to reflect on what has influenced your barriers and perspectives on intimacy. A few areas where your view of intimacy may be influenced can come from past experiences, with family, past trauma, cultural narratives, limiting beliefs, and more, right? It is a complicated and multi-layered topic. But this step is linked to the shame stopper activity As these elements and their influence are revealed, you get to open the door of the driver's seat, get in, and head in the direction that you choose for closeness. That's exactly what this step does. It puts you back in the driver's seat of choosing intimacy in the direction you want to go for closeness. Second, I wrote a blog post on the fear of intimacy. So read that and learn more about how it has looked in someone else's life. That has been really helpful for me to get really curious about, I don't know how this looks in my life, but there's clearly a barrier there. What does it look like for other people? It may shake loose some ideas for how it looks in yours, or you may say, that's not how it displays for me, but it does in this other way. Great. Our stories are not the same. They're going to look so different, but we can learn from each other. So after you read that, then ask yourself, if these fears didn't exist, what would your relationship look like with yourself? And what would your relationship look like with someone else? All right. Now for the third step. Reimagine a refined or a new vision for the safe vulnerability that you desire, both emotionally and sexually. No thoughts of, well, that's just not going to happen for me, or fear allowed in this space. This is dreaming space. So setting those clear intentions for where you want to go maximizes the possibility of you actually achieving your dreams. Plus, you'll learn the hows for increasing intimate closeness with your partner as we continue through this course. So for this step, follow the prompts in the PDF linked below this video. And each of the resources linked in this course, they make up your Roadmap to Healing workbook. So below this video, you will find all Roadmap resources ready to download and view. Anytime I mention it, it will be below the video. Now go, step into action toward a new vision of intimacy.